Here's my favorite anime in less than 30 minutes. So the story starts with our protagonist Maomao, who is an apothecary's daughter. Her father asks her to run an errand for him, saying that she should be careful because the abductions are on the rise. She says she is fine and goes on with her day, only to get abducted and sold to the Imperial Palace. Now there she works as a laundry maid. 3 months later, she notices the Emperor's concubines, Lihua and Gyokyo, fighting. Their children are rumored to be cursed. Now Maomao is a woman of medicine/herbs. She doesn't believe in curses. She overhears the symptoms and figured out the cause. Then she secretly warns them to stop using a lead-based face powder by cutting off her maid uniform and writing on it. Lihua's ladies-in-waiting ignores the message and her son dies, but Gyokyo listens, saving her daughter. Then comes our main lead, Jinshi, who is a very beautiful eunuch. Soon he discovers that she's the one behind the solution, as she's the only servant who is able to read. Though she keeps denying that fact, but he was sharp enough to notice past them. He introduces her to Gyokyo, who decides to keep her in her pavilion. Soon Maomao begins her new role as Gyokyo's lady-in-waiting and a food taster. Though at first she was very excited to get a chance to accidentally taste poison, but soon she got bored of always eating and of others pitying her, as she has scars on her hand because of her experiments. Meanwhile, Jinshi tries to charm her but ends up failing miserably, and her glaring at him only fuels his obsession. Next day, he brought an issue to her, asking her inside along with some food an officer gave him. The issue involved soldiers getting ill. They thought that it was caused by the food, but Maomao solves the case super easily, deducing that toxic fumes from burned woods were the cause of the illness and not the food. As for the treat that he bought, she told him that there was an aphrodisiac in it. So later Jinshi asked her to make that by giving her access to the court doctor's stock of medicines and ingredients, which was like a dream to her. Few days later, rumors started about a ghostly woman, Fuyu, dancing at night in the palace. Jinshi came to Maomao again as he suspects that maybe it's a case of sleepwalking. Maomao didn't want it to help him at first and wonders about his status, but he was very stubborn, so she gives in. Maomao got to know that Fuyu pretends to be mad to avoid the emperor's favor, as she wanted to be given to the general she was in love with. Something similar to what she had seen in the brothel that she used to deliver medicine to. It was a beautiful episode, a bit scary in the starting, but it was one of my favorite mysteries of the anime. Then we see that concubine Lihua was not getting better, so the emperor orders Maomao to treat her, but Lihua's ladies-in-waiting keeps getting in her way. Once, twice, and even the third time, until Jinshi steps in, charming them into letting Maomao work. Maomao discovers Lihua's head lady-in-waiting secretly used the poisonous beauty powder on her because they wanted her to look flawless, the same lead-based powder that killed her son. She got pissed, and after slapping some sense into the lady-in-waiting, she helps concubine Lihua recovers with steam baths that she asks Jinshi to be specifically made and a special diet. She gives it her best, and Lady Lihua sees that. Finally, she gets fully recovered in 2 months, and Maomao returned to Lady Gyokyo tired from all the hard work. Honestly, the whole episode was so cinematic, and I found it funny how Maomao points out that woman changes so quickly as ladies-in-waiting get charmed by Jinshi, and later Jinshi throws the same line at her after witnessing her anger. And it's safe to say that after this incident, Lihua's ladies-in-waiting were very scared of Maomao. In the beginning of this episode, we get a glimpse of Jinshi practicing and Maomao finding and then enjoying grilled mushroom with the quack, who was the doctor that she will be working with. Then someone comes into the clinic asking for a cure to a curse. Again, she didn't believe in curses, so she takes a look at the man's curse, and it turns out that they were just rashes. She gives him some medicine and tells him that they're harmless. Jinshi arrives and tries to charm her with his shines again, but she's all work talk, so he gets to the point, asking her about the same curse that causes the fire to change color. She told him that it was caused by the salt in the woods that were being burned. The garden party approaches, and as Lady Gyokyo was attending it this year, Maomao had to attend too. The ladies-in-waiting dresses Maomao up and tried to put her makeup on her freckles, which turns out to be fake. Then we see Jinshi sweet talks his way to Gyokyo and meets Maomao. Though he doesn't recognize her at first without her freckles, she reveals to him that they were a disguise to avoid unwanted attention. She started wearing them since she did work around the brothel, and now she feels incomplete without them. Jinshi was already captivated by her attitude toward him, but now seeing her appearance and hearing her trouble troubled past, he apologizes to her and gives her his hairpin for protection and for marking her as his. Gyokyo, who marked her earlier with a necklace, was a bit jealous, as Maomao was no longer hers alone. The party begins, and Maomao gets caught in petty rivalries of concubines ladies-in-waiting. She receives 2 more hairpins, and one of them was from Lihua. She also gets to know about the distance between consort Aduo and Lishu due to politics. Things get pretty exciting for Maomao and very intense for others when Gyokyo's soup turns out to be poisoned. Maomao excuses herself when Jinshi sees her coughing up the poison. She smiles at him and he takes her to the clinic. While she asks for the soup again, he denies, but she keeps dreaming about swallowing it. Then she wonders where his usual spark was, and her mind took her somewhere else. Finally, after she has vomited, he asks her about the poisoning. And few minutes later, Maomao identifies the poison and traces it back to Lishu's food allergies. She resolves the issue quietly to avoid scandal, but suspect that poisoning may have been intentional, raising Jinshi's suspicion about the true target. Now, after recovering from her poisoning, Maomao gets bored again and asks Gyokyo for permission to use the parlor. There, Gaoshun arrives, bringing the silver bowl that contained the poisoned soup. Using a dusting technique from her former workplace, Maomao uncovers fingerprints, including those of an outsider, suggesting a sabotage. She also deduced that consort Lishu is being bullied by her own ladies-in-waiting, meaning that the poisoned soup originally intended to be with Lady Lishu. But her ladies-in-waiting changed the dish with Gyokyo's to harass the youngest concubine, but actually ends up saving her. Later, Maomao learns about the symbolic meaning of hairpins, which act as a token of favor, according to her friend Shaolon. So Maomao cleverly used this knowledge to secure an escort from Lihaku, a soldier who had given her the 4th hairpin. He initially dismisses her, but had to agree after her negotiations involving connection to the brothel. Maomao finally visits her home and gets a very warm welcome by the granny. She then gets home to spend time with her father, who thinks that her being employed at the Rare Palace is a twist of fate. The next day when Maomao was coming from a walk, she sees a servant girl banging at their door. The girl grabs her the moment she sees her and dragged her to the neighborhood brothel to handle a poisoning incident involving a courtesan and a wealthy customer. She saves both the victims, but later figures out that it was an attempt murder by tobacco poisoning disguised as a double suicide. The customer, who was a rich merchant's son, emotionally abuses the courtesan who wanted revenge. Though Maomao's intervention saved the brothel from scandal, she recognized the toxic cycle at play. Before returning to the Rare Palace, we see Maomao in a room where an unconscious woman is resting. Now, upon her arrival, Gyokyo and the other welcomes her back, while Jinshi took her to ask some very important questions about her holiday. And Maomao's casual comments about Lihaku nearly broke him, because he spent all his time misunderstanding the whole situation. In the end, after enjoying herself, Gyokyo explains everything. Later, we see Jinshi, who was still sulking from the shock of Maomao's homecoming, gets interrupted by a report of a high-ranking official's death, who has died after drinking session during a party. He comes to Maomao again, giving her the booze and asking her about this case. Maomao, after drinking the alcohol, asks for the cup in which the official was drinking in. Looking at the inside, she determines excessive salt added to his drink as cause of his death, as he has lost the ability to taste it and didn't realize how much of it was added to his drink. Maybe it was a prank or just an act of hatred. She hints at the killer's identity but avoids possibility of naming them. And as a reward, Jinshi gives her another bottle of booze. But when she teases him about not working, he teases her back by saying that they'd soon pass a rule for underage drinking, making her panic. In the next scene, we see Maomao refusing an autopsy request for a drowned servant, saying that her father forbid her to do so, as humans could become medical ingredients too. She wonders if that case was a murder or a suicide, and notes details suggesting the death was staged as suicide, possibly linked to the recent poisoning incident. As she collects her thought on how easy it was for her victims to pass away, combined with her thoughts of her past, she requests Jinshi that if he were to execute him for some reason, she'd want it to be by poison. This bothers Jinshi, but he stays quiet. In the end, we see Jinshi getting a report on whoever else had burns on their arms, relating to the curse from 2 months ago. It was Fengming, Lady Aduo's head lady-in-waiting. Another rumor spread about the drowned servant who was accused of poisoning concubine Lishu's food. Additional gossip suggests that concubine Aduo may lose her title to a younger concubine. During a tea party, Maomao notices bullying toward Lady Lishu again, and notices her reaction to the honey beverage. The party was assisted by Jinshi, who then sends Maomao to assist Lady Aduo without any specific instructions. After investigating, Maomao reports back to him, but she doesn't find anything suspicious in Aduo's pavilion. Then suddenly Jinshi pranks Maomao by asking her to eat the honey. And when she gets cornered, a realization hits her, connecting the recent incidents including Li Shu's allergies and the servant's suicide, and even Li Shu being scared of walking around the Garnet Pavilion, until Gyokyo steps in to save her and Jinshi runs off. Maomao asks Gaoshun to bring her the past record of the emperor's deceased son with Aduo. She notices that the boy was delivered by the doctor named Lumin, who was also Maomao's father, and was expelled from the rare palace afterward. She realizes something and goes to confront Spangman about all the events that took place. She also learns that Aduo becomes infertile after her first child because the doctor had to attend to another royal birth. And when the child was just young, Spangman unknowingly caused his death by giving him poisoned honey. Li Shu, who was also poisoned as a baby, reveals the truth to Fangman, setting off a change of events. Guilt and loyalty to Aduo drove Fangman's action, including trying to keep Li Shu away and even poisoning her at the garden party. After Fangman's execution, Maomao finds Aduo on top of a wall and later a drunk Jinshi below. First, Aduo hints at her son's true identity, leaving Maomao to suspect the babies were swapped at birth. And after that, we see Jinshi sulking and crying to her about how Aduo left him after drinking. The next day, Aduo gives up her title and departs from the Southern Palace. Seeing her and Jinshi together, Maomao grows even more certain of the swap. Meanwhile, Jinshi continues to investigate Fangman's family, and during his investigation, he finds out that Maomao becomes the collateral damage in the fallout. She will be losing her position due to Fangman's family side business that ties to human trafficking. Jinshi is conflicted about keeping Maomao or letting her go. At first, Gaoshun thought that Maomao was just a toy to him, but he realized that it might not be the case, as Jinshi ultimately lets her return to her place, thinking it was best for her. However, once she was there, she resumed her part-time work as a courtesan, settling her debts while trying not to get sold off by the granny. In just a week, Jinshi comes to regret his decision, and he starts sulking again. So Gaoshun had to arrange something. Here in Pleasure District, Maomao attends a lavish party hosted outside the brothel. There she finds Jinshi sitting alone, with a sad face, though he lights up by just looking at her. He also reaches out to her, but she moves away, telling him about their no-touch policy. He contemplates about buying her from the brothel, and she agrees. And then he insists on touching her again, and she agrees to that too, knowing how stubborn he is. But to a minimum contact. He touches her lips and kisses his finger to satisfy himself, making her blush. The next day, with Gaoshun's help to find rare herbs and with Jinshi's gold, they arranges for Maomao to return. Even with all that, Maomao still remains unaware of the extent that Jinshi would go through to keep her close. Anyway, she gets ready and Jinshi comes to get her, blushing ever so lightly by looking at her beauty. But on the way to the outer court, which was Jinshi's home, they got a lot of attention. So he gets jealous and asks her to use her fake freckles here too. Gaoshun introduces her to Soren, one of Jinshi's personal assistant. She was a chill but very sharp old lady. At first, Jinshi wanted her to be a court lady, but she fails the required exam, making her Jinshi's personal assistant. While living there, she also faces jealousy from other court ladies, but her sharp wit allow her to brush off their antics. Then as she was exploring the palace, she stumbles into a restricted area where a court lady with a very suspicious mix of sandalwood and a bitter scent scolded her. Meanwhile, a mysterious figure seems to be keeping a very close eye on Maomao. Then on Gyokyo's recommendation, Maomao starts with teaching the consorts about their duties. She doesn't have a chance to reject, so she prepares the material for her teachings. Jinshi led her to their destination and she kicks him out so they could have girls talk. But he doesn't just go away, he eavesdrops. By the end of her class, Lady Gyokyo and Lihua are very happy as they handle the lesson with elegance, while Li Shu struggles throughout the whole thing a lot, and Lolan remains aloof. There is another incident where a palace fire destroys a food warehouse. Maomao investigates like always and concludes that the incident was caused by a smoldering ember from an ivy pipe, igniting the floating wheat dust. She even conducts an experiment there with Lihaku, whose head cover ends up getting lit by fire. This discovery, however, raises suspicions about the person responsible, as the expensive pipe suggested someone of high status. Then Rihaku assists Maomao in spreading the warning to ban smoking in food storage areas, and by the end we see a man crying and another one side-eyeing him. The next chapter starts by Gaoshun requesting Maomao expertise in solving a case, and Jinshi distracting and disturbing them because he wants to be a part of that too. The case involves a bureaucrat who fell into the coma after eating improperly prepared pepperfish. Maomao visits the place with Gaoshun's son, Basin, to investigate the kitchen and identifies the source of the poison, which wasn't the pepperfish but an imported seaweed that wasn't processed correctly. And the way Maomao identifies this poison was by eating the seaweed, making all three of them panic. It's clear that she is injurious to her own health because she tries to eat it again only for Jinshi to stop her. Anyways, the culprit turns out to be the bureaucrat's younger brother, seeking revenge for family mistreatment.
I didn't see you standing there! Welcome back home, Master!
Then we see a high-ranking military officer, Lakan, visiting Jinshi in his office to complain about how he appointed someone connected to the brothel known as the Verdigris house as his servant. Lakan goes on saying that he once knew a courtesan at that place who would sell her skills but not herself. He describes her attitude, and that reminded Jinshi of how Maomao acted around him. Before leaving, he asked for Jinshi's help with a problem that only Maomao could solve. So the next time Jinshi assigned Maomao to a case involving a deceased metal worker who left cryptic inheritance to his three sons. The elder one inherited the workshop, the second a lock chest, and the youngest a glass fish bowl. He also left a note with "Continue the tea parties as usual." Later, Maomao, with Basin's help, visits a metalworking shack. While checking an old chest, she noticed that a solder is blocking the keyhole of the central drawer, making it impossible to open. Maomao also discovers that that solder could melt using the sunlight concentrated through the fishbowl. Inside, they find a key that unlocks all the drawers containing various items, including a crystal. At first, they all dismissed it as a bad prank their father played on them, but they're united upon the youngest plea. Later, the news reveals that they continued running their father's metalworking business. That night, Jinshi calls Maomao and asks her if she could do his makeup to disguise him, because he wanted to stroll through the town and meet someone without being recognized. His beauty is too striking for a simple disguise, so Maomao goes all out, dulling his hairs and clothing, altering his scent, and even disguising his muscular physique and his honey voice. However, before starting, something goes through her mind, and she applies the lipstick her sister had given her. And the funny part was that Soren and Gaoshun were also in this with her, though they all get very shocked by seeing how beautiful he looked with that, thanking the god that there wasn't anyone around. She began her art, and when she was done, Gaoshun and Soren corners her to go along with Jinshi, since he was going to the place closer to Maomao's home. She wanted to deny, but again, she was in no position to do so. They set off, and in the carriage, they agreed to call him Jinka. Not like he was going to answer her anyways if she called him by his real name. Alright, so during their walk with Basin sneaking and snooping around, Jinshi observes Maomao's silence, leading to a conversation about her adoptive father, Liumin. She tells him that Liumin was a eunuch, a status imposed by the previous empress. Their discussion turns tense when Jinshi asks how a courtesan can lower their value, and Maomao explained bluntly that having a child make them worthless. Jinshi is visibly shocked by this harsh truth, but they reach their destination, and Maomao refused to accompany him further, asking to take a few days off at work instead. While home, she wakes up from a nightmare and was sent to a Verdigris house to run an errand. There, she also tended to a woman in the annex, and we finally got to know that she was her own mother, who was suffering from syphilis. Flashbacks reveal that the brothel got so much shame when Maomao's mother contracted the disease, delaying her treatment and worsening her condition. Then we see Lakan, a long-time customer, visits, and Maomao hides while Maimei, one of the three sisters, distracts him. She gets back to the palace and buries herself with work, distracting herself from thinking about her mother. Everyone noticed this change in her, and finally Soren talked to her. After their conversation about the class and status, she asked her to run an errand from the inner palace pharmacy, where she encounters Suri, who was the same court lady who caught Maomao wandering around the inner palace before. Suri claims to grow medical plants, including the one used for resurrection medicine, which gets Maomao's curiosity on peak. Meanwhile, Jinshi's purification rituals for long assignments causes Maomao to question his identity as a eunuch, but she buries her thoughts again. Lakan visits Jinshi one more time and expresses interest in Maomao, creating tension as he asks Jinshi to let them meet. Jinshi realized that Lakan was Maomao's father in this episode, and he also finds out that Maomao doesn't even want to hear his name, because when he tells her that an official named Lakan wants to meet her sometime soon, she showed him the angriest stare that she has ever given him, making him reconsider his decision. The next day, Jinshi thought back to Maomao's reaction, and Gaoshun asked him to focus on his upcoming ritual. On the other side, Lihaku informed Maomao about the theft of ceremonial tools, which coincided with the warehouse explosion. She brainstorms a little and finds out that the warehouse manager, the official founder of rare food, is ill from poisoning, and Master Conan, who died from excessive salt intake, was the former warehouse manager. Lihaku then mentions that a tall court lady gave the pipe as a reward to the guard. He also tells a description, and someone with that same description comes into Maomao's mind, but she holds back speculation, focusing only on the facts. She gives hints to Lihaku on who might be the culprit, and while Lihaku expresses his proudness, Jinshi spawns there. She shared her findings with Jinshi, but there was no excitement in her, so he set a reward for her, an ox bezoar, if she continues to investigate further. She really wanted that ox bezoar, so she agrees enthusiastically. In the next scene, we see her studying a bit more. Then the realization hits her, and her findings led her to an altar, where the purification ceremony was underway. She ran there, but the guards block her entry. She tries her wits, but ends up getting hit. Still, she wanted to fight her way in, determined to prevent any harm. Then Lakan came and vouches for her at the last moment. Though Maomao despised owning him anything, but there was a life at line, so she ran. She got there just in time and saved Jinshi from being crushed by the falling ornament, injuring herself in the process. As she collapses, she wonders why Jinshi was there at the ceremony, her thoughts lingering even as she loses consciousness in his arms, asking if he'd give her the ox bezoar now, while he looks at her with so much worry. Then he carries her to his residence, passing by a shocked Lakan. Maomao finally wakes up in Jinshi's room, smelling sandalwood and recovering from her injuries. Jinshi, Basin, and Gaoshun comes to meet her, and during their briefing, she pieces together the failed assassination attempt on Jinshi. One of the stolen tools, an accessory that holds a heavy ornament, had been remade by the late metalworker on orders from someone, but with lead, which easily melts in open flames and was installed in place around the time of the failed assassination. This shocks everyone, and they realize that someone was after Jinshi's life. After she gets a little better, Lihaku comes to inform her that Suri has died due to poisoning. She suspected the thorn apple, a drug capable of stimulating death just for a little while. Maomao soon discovers that Suri had faked her death using that drug properties to escape. Fascinated by Suri's boldness and knowledge, Maomao set out to uncover the formula for the resurrection medicine herself, because she had no idea on how to create it. In her excitement, her stitches open again, making Jinshi panic. In this episode, we get to know of Jinshi's actual age and the fact that he's not a eunuch. But Maomao would later figure this fact out in Season 2. For now, Maomao takes matters into her own hand, ensuring the rare palace pharmacy is cleaned and properly managed, asking the quack to help her by scaring him with a story. When they were done cleaning, the quack shared his family's struggle as official paper sellers. Since the previous empress put a ban on cutting trees, it affected the quality of their product. Maomao helps him pinpoint the problem, an issue with the water supply, and the presence of auxin in paper making process. If that issue is solved, it could help them restore the quality of their paper. Then we see Lihaku approaching Maomao for advice on buying out Pyrin, which was a courtesan who turns out to be Maomao's vet nurse. However, another misunderstanding arises when Jinshi barges in on them. He sulks some more and nearly gets his heart broken again, but this time Maomao spills the truth. That led to Jinshi visiting Lihaku to offer double price to assist him just because his cat, meaning Maomao, sees him worthy of her sister. Lihaku refused, determined to win Pyrin's heart through his own efforts. Not a part of the story, but in sub, Lihaku calls Maomao a cat too, which makes Jinshi burning in blue flames even more interesting. Okay, so the next time Lakan visits Jinshi, he challenges him to produce blue roses for the upcoming spring party. Even though he had no idea on how to produce blue roses, he agrees, and turns to Maomao for help like always. Motivated by her desire to humiliate Lakan, Maomao takes on the task too, using the steam bath they created for Lady Lihua as a greenhouse to accelerate the blooming process. With Shaolan's assistance, despite her injured leg, Maomao pushes herself to exhaustion Gaoshun, but successfully produces the blue roses and other multicolored varieties using dyed water. Jinshi also notices her state and feels bad for her, but he really needed those roses. And while growing them, Maomao starts a new trend of orange nail paint, just to annoy Lacan. The color that affects the eye the most. The color that the specific courtesan used to wear in the verdigrease house. On the spring party, the roses become Jinshi's trump card, where Consort Lalan is introduced between the political tensions with rivals like Shisu and Lacan. Maomao also catches Lacan off guard, and we find out that Lacan views people as chess pieces, except Maomao, his uncle, and the woman he loved. After meeting him, Maomao challenges him to a high-stakes game of chess. And though Jinshi doesn't like this idea, she agrees to live with Lacan if he wins. However, if she wins, he had to buy out a courtesan from the verdigrease house. To raise the stakes even more, they added a twist, a poisoned drink among the cups of alcohol. Maomao was so chill during this challenge, winning on the third game as Lacan collapses after drinking the alcohol, revealing his inability to handle it, which Maomao already knew about. The episode goes into Lacan's tragic past, including his struggles to recognize faces, his father's evil plan, and his bond with a courtesan named Shin. Despite his carefree facade, Lacan's inability to protect Shin haunts him till this day, especially after finding out her and Maomao's served finger, a grim token of her despair. Maomao cleverly uses this knowledge, leaving Lacan at the verdigrease house with a bitter medicine and a dried blue rose. He wakes up and heads down the stairs after thinking about what he should do with Jinshi, as he has touched Maomao's shoulders more than once. Maomao said that he need to choose one, so he chooses Mei, someone who he also used to play with, but suddenly gets drawn to an old lullaby after Mei opens the door. He runs to the sound and finds his love, Maomao's mother. They reunite after years, and he buys out Shin and plans to live with her for the rest of her life. Back to the outer palace, Maomao reflects on Shin's sacrifice, revealing that she owes her life to Shin's decision to keep her pregnancy, and how she acknowledged Lacan's strength despite disliking his laziness, while warning Jinshi to not make Lacan his enemy. This is the last episode, and it ends in the most beautiful yet funny way, as Maomao dances on the top of a wall, saying her goodbye to the courtesan that is bought. Jinshi suddenly arrives there and causes her to fall, though he catches her at the same time. They have this little chat, and Maomao notices her stitches have reopened due to her dancing. She sat right there to stitch them back up, but Jinshi panics and decides to carry her to the doctor. It was a beautiful scene, but out of nowhere, Maomao asks him something very important, though she knew that it wasn't the time or the place for that. Jinshi listens to her very nervously, but headbutts her when he realized that she was asking about the ox bezo that he had promised her. She thought about how childish and younger he looks like this, and how she prefers him that way. That was it. I hope you liked this video, though it's a bit too long. So thank you for listening to me. Take care of yourself and goodbye.
I don't really wanna hurt you, but I can't control the pain. If you're sticking by my side, maybe we could be okay. Okay, maybe you could be the change.